The Vanguard sailed through the quiet void, the crew still processing their narrow escape from the collapsing moon. Captain Marik stood on the bridge, staring out at the endless stars, lost in thought. The alien technology they had destroyed had been beyond anything humanity had ever encountered, far more advanced than even the Zintari or the other species they had made contact with. But it wasn't just the technology that bothered her. It was the question left lingering in her mind: what else was out there, and how long before something far worse crossed their path? "Captain," Voss's voice broke her reverie. He approached quietly, his face calm but serious. "We've intercepted a transmission. It's coming from deep space, just outside of known territory." Marik turned to face him, her brow furrowed. "What kind of transmission?" Voss tapped his console, bringing the signal up on the view screen. The audio crackled with static before a haunting voice echoed through the bridge. It was faint, distorted, but unmistakably human. "This is the Starship Odyssey. If anyone can hear this, we are under attack. Unknown vessels, repeat, unknown vessels, closing in. We need assistance. Please, someone." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. "Odyssey," Marik whispered. "That ship went missing over a decade ago. It was one of the early deep space exploration vessels, charting regions of space we haven't even begun to explore." Voss nodded. "And according to the records, it vanished without a trace. There were no signs of an attack, no distress signals, until now." Marik straightened, her heart quickening. "Can we pinpoint the source of the transmission?" Zora, who had been monitoring the signal from her station, chimed in. "It's faint, but I've got a general location. It's coming from deep in uncharted space, far beyond where any known ships should be." "Captain, we should be cautious," Dr. Orlis interjected, her voice carrying a note of concern. "There's no telling what's out there. If this ship has been missing for over a decade, there's a good chance the crew didn't survive. We could be walking into a trap." Marik nodded. "I'm aware of the risks, but we can't ignore this. If the Odyssey is still out there, we need to find out what happened to it. Prepare the ship for an intercept course." As the crew worked to change course, the tension on the bridge grew palpable. They had faced unknown threats before, but the idea of an ancient ship calling for help after so long, it felt different, like a specter from the past returning to haunt them. Hours later, the Vanguard approached the coordinates of the Odyssey's distress signal. The stars outside seemed darker here, more distant, as if this region of space itself was hiding something. The sensors beeped softly as they picked up the wreckage of an old starship floating silently in the void. "There it is," Tori Lenka whispered from her station, her voice filled with awe and trepidation. "The Odyssey." On the view screen, the ship appeared, an ancient vessel, its hull battered and scarred from what looked like years of drifting through space. But despite its condition, the Odyssey was mostly intact. "No signs of life," Voss reported, his mechanical eyes scanning the wreckage. "But the power core is still faintly active. Whatever happened to them, it wasn't a complete systems failure." Marik studied the image of the ship, her mind racing. "Prepare a boarding party. I want to know what happened to them. And keep an eye on those unknown vessels mentioned in the transmission. I don't want any surprises." Voss, Orlis, Zora, and a small security team prepared for the mission, suiting up in the shuttle bay. As they boarded the shuttle and launched toward the Odyssey, the weight of the unknown pressed down on them. The shuttle docked with the derelict ship's airlock, and the team entered cautiously. The corridors were dark and cold, the flickering emergency lights casting long shadows along the walls. The ship had the eerie stillness of a tomb. "Stay close," Marik ordered, her voice low. "We don't know what we're walking into." As they made their way deeper into the ship, the atmosphere grew even more oppressive. The walls were marked with strange alien symbols, unlike anything they had seen before. It was as if someone, had been here after the crew disappeared. "Captain, over here," Voss called, his mechanical enhancements detecting movement ahead. They entered the ship's command center, where the faint glow of a console still flickered. But that wasn't what caught their attention. At the center of the room, suspended in a glowing field of energy, was a single figure, a man dressed in the uniform of the Odyssey's crew. Marik approached cautiously. "Is he alive?" Orla stepped forward, her medical scanner in hand. He's in stasis. The field is keeping him suspended between life and death, but I'm not sure how long it's been active or what happens if we deactivate it. Voss examined the stasis field, his eyes narrowing. This technology isn't human. It's the same kind of energy we saw on the moon. Marik's blood ran cold. Then the Odyssey wasn't just attacked. It was experimented on. Zora shook her head in disbelief. Whatever did this had to be incredibly advanced. The crew might have been kept alive, or something worse. Orlis continued her scan, her face pale. If we deactivate the stasis field, it could kill him. But leaving him like this, it's not right. Marik's mind raced. They had come to find answers, and this man, whoever he was, might be the only one who could give them. But deactivating the stasis field was a risk. If it was the only thing keeping him alive, they could lose their only chance at uncovering the truth. Do it, Marik said quietly. Deactivate the field. We need to know what happened here. Orlis hesitated for only a moment before entering the sequence into her scanner. The field around the man flickered and then disappeared, leaving him suspended for a brief moment before he collapsed to the floor. Voss was by his side in an instant, scanning him for life signs. He's alive, but weak. We need to get him back to the Vanguard for further treatment. Before, the team quickly moved the unconscious man onto a stretcher and made their way back to the shuttle. As they left the wreckage of the Odyssey, the sense of unease grew. Whatever had happened to the crew, it wasn't over. Back on the Vanguard, the man lay in the medbay, his vitals slowly stabilizing under Orlis's care. Marik stood by his side, waiting for him to wake, hoping he could provide the answers they so desperately needed. Suddenly, the man's eyes fluttered open, and his hand reached out, gripping Marik's arm with surprising strength. "You have to stop them," he gasped, his voice hoarse. "They're coming. The ones who took us. They'll come for you too." Marik's blood ran cold as his words echoed in her mind. "Who's coming? What are they?" The man's eyes widened in terror as he whispered, "The shadows. They're in the void, and they're waiting." The Vanguard's medbay was quiet, save for the soft beeping of the life support systems. Captain Marik stood over the man they had rescued from the Odyssey, his words echoing in her mind. "The shadows, they're in the void, and they're waiting." "What do you mean, the shadows?" Marik asked, leaning in closer. "Who are they? What do they want?" The man's breathing was labored, his eyes wide with fear. His voice was weak, but his words were filled with urgency. "They came from the darkness, not of this galaxy, something else. They took my crew, used us, experiments. We weren't supposed to survive." Marik exchanged a glance with Dr. Orlis, who had been monitoring the man's condition. The medical officer nodded slightly, confirming that his vital signs were stabilizing, but the terror in his voice was unmistakable. "They're coming back," the man whispered, his eyes fixed on some invisible point beyond the walls of the ship. "They know you're here now. They've been waiting, watching." Marik straightened, her mind racing. They had encountered numerous threats in their time on the Vanguard, but this was different. Something about this man's fear, the depth of it, unsettled her in a way nothing had before. "Captain," Voss's voice came over the intercom, breaking the silence. "We've detected an anomaly approaching our position. Unknown vessel, no known signatures match." Marik's heart sank. She turned to the man in the medbay, whose eyes were filled with dread. "It's them, isn't it?" He nodded weakly. "You can't fight them. Not like this. You need to hide or run." Marik wasn't one to flee from a challenge, but the look in his eyes told her everything she needed to know. This wasn't a normal threat. This was something beyond their comprehension. "I'll be back," she said, her voice calm despite the rising tension. She motioned for Orlis to keep monitoring the man before hurrying to the bridge. On the bridge, the atmosphere was tense. The view screen showed the anomaly, a dark, shifting mass that seemed to absorb the light around it. There were no distinct features, no visible engines or weapons. It was unlike any ship or entity they had ever encountered. "Captain," Voss said, his expression grim, "the anomaly is closing in fast. Sensors are having trouble locking onto it. Whatever it is, it's not operating within the normal parameters of space-time." Marik's eyes were glued to the view screen. "Can we get a message to Starfleet? Let them know what we've encountered?" Zora, her hands moving swiftly over her console, shook her head. "Long-range communications are being jammed. It's like we're cut off from the rest of the galaxy. Tori Lenka, sitting at the comms station, looked pale. I've never seen anything like this. The signal, it's almost like it's feeding off the interference itself. Marik's mind raced. They were alone, trapped in an unknown region of space, with a hostile force closing in. They had encountered powerful enemies before, but the sheer unknown of what lay ahead unnerved her in a way she hadn't felt in years. "Shields up," she ordered. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. We're not letting them take us without a fight." The crew snapped into action, their professionalism cutting through the fear that gripped the bridge. The Vanguard's shields flickered to life, a faint bubble of energy surrounding the ship as it prepared for whatever the anomaly would bring. But the anomaly didn't stop. The dark mass continued to approach, moving unnervingly fast. It wasn't attacking, it was just there, looming over them like a predator stalking its prey. The shadows that surrounded it seemed to stretch, creeping toward the Vanguard as though the darkness itself was reaching for them. "Captain," Voss said quietly, "we need to retreat. This isn't something we can face head-on. Our weapons might not even register against it." Marik clenched her jaw. Everything in her wanted to stand and fight, but Voss was right. This was a conventional enemy. This was something more, something ancient and unknowable. "Helm, plot a course away from the anomaly," she ordered. "Zora, prepare the warp drive. We're getting out of here." But just as the ship began to turn, the anomaly reacted. Tendrils of dark energy shot out from the mass, latching onto the Vanguard's shields. The ship shuddered violently as the energy tendrils pulsed, sending waves of destabilizing force through the hull. "Shields are dropping," Zora shouted, her fingers flying across the console. "They're draining our power systems." "Divert all auxiliary power to the shields," Marik commanded, her voice firm. The ship groaned under the strain, the tendrils tightening their grip like a vice. Marik could feel the tension on the bridge rising as the Vanguard struggled to break free. The lights flickered, and the hum of the engines began to fade. "Captain, we can't hold much longer," Zora yelled. "They're pulling us in." Marik's mind raced. There had to be another way, a way to escape this darkness before it consumed them. But what? Suddenly, the man's words came back to her. "You can't fight them. You need to hide." Her eyes widened. That was it. "Zora," she said, her voice suddenly calm amidst the chaos. "Can we mask our energy signature? Cloak the ship, even for a short time?" Zora blinked, processing the request. "It's risky. Our systems aren't designed for full cloaking, but I can modify the shields to temporarily mask our energy signature. It won't last long, though." "Do it," Marik ordered. Zora worked quickly, rerouting power from non-essential systems to create a makeshift cloaking field. As the tendrils continued to drain the ship's power, the Vanguard began to flicker and fade, its energy signature disappearing from the anomaly's grasp. "Hold on," Zora muttered under her breath. "Just a few more seconds." And then, with a final pulse of energy, the Vanguard vanished. The bridge went silent as the tendrils recoiled, unable to latch onto the ship's cloaked signature. The anomaly hovered in the void, searching for its prey, but finding nothing. "Captain, it worked," Voss said quietly, his eyes still fixed on the view screen. "We're hidden." Marik exhaled slowly. "Good. Now keep us cloaked as long as possible. Helm, plot a course away from this anomaly. Minimum warp. Just enough to get us clear without drawing attention." The crew worked in near silence, the weight of what had just happened sinking in. They had come face to face with a force that defied explanation, a force that had consumed the Odyssey and nearly claimed the Vanguard as well. As the ship quietly slipped away from the anomaly, Marik stood at the center of the bridge, her thoughts racing. This was just the beginning. Whatever these shadows were, they were more dangerous than anything the Vanguard had encountered before. And as they sailed deeper into the void, Marik couldn't shake the feeling that they had only delayed the inevitable.